We start the day with huge news. Mike Vrabel announced as the new head coach of the New England Patriots. Let me just say this. Didn't surprise me at all, Frank. I think a lot of us knew that we thought maybe the Raiders would be in position to try and lure Vrabel over, given the relationship with Brady. But this was clear from the outset. The Patriots did what should not be allowed. The Patriots clearly circumvented the Rooney Rule, but they don't care. They went out and got the coach that they want. They brought the guy into the building that knows the team, knows the culture, knows the Kraft family, all of these things that we're going to say. But frankly, Frank, they got one of, if not the most coveted coaches on the open market. So congratulations to the Patriots.
Yeah, and as we talked about on the show last week, I mean, I don't like the process for the Patriots in some ways. I don't like that they fired Gerard Mayo after 1 year when what was he expected to do? I mean, this was a bad roster coming in. He's a first-time head coach. They weren't willing to be patient through his mistakes. But I did say, and I think we all agreed, like, well, if it ends up that they land Mike Vrabel, I get it. Like, it's such a perfect fit. The culture part of it, the ties with the Patriots, obviously, ties with the former glory with Bill Belichick. And Vrabel is a respected head coach. I have no problem with this hiring at all. Like, how could you? I mean, I think Vrabel, unless you really love with Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson is more of a unsure thing, right? Mike Vrabel was the guy in this coaching cycle. And for the Patriots to get him, pair him with Drake May, who obviously has a great upside going forward, was just a smart move. Now, again, should they have done that to Mayo? I don't love the way that happened. I really don't like the way that they flouted the Rooney Rule here. It was just a joke. Like, I know the NFL probably can't do anything about it. Like, technically, letter of the law, they did interview two black coaches, and Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, but neither guy was even in the league last year. Like, I mean, they had never had any chance at that job. It was a total sham. And I think the Patriots should be called out on that. It's ridiculous. It's bad. But they get the guy they wanted all along. They hired him very quickly. It's the quickest hire in a long time. I read that somewhere in only 7 days after the season ended. So this was all right in line. Like, you could almost go back and be like, well, if Mayo didn't have this in his contract that he was going to be Bill Belichick's successor, this probably happens a year ago. And it was almost like, what, did the Patriots just kind of be like, well, we got to wait a year, until we can fire Jared. Mike, just hang on, because we're going to get to you in a year. You're going to be our coach in 2025. You don't have to put a 4-13 on your record this year. Just hang tight. If you're a conspiracy theorist, I could see that. But all that matters really at the end of the day is Mike Vrabel is a Patriots head coach. And I think it's a great hire.
Yeah, two things can be true. This is a great hire. I think this is a home run hire for the Patriots.
Yes.
I also think there has to be some level of accountability, at least in our conversation, for the entire way that they circumvented what the hiring process is supposed to look like with the Rooney Rule. And I think it's also fair to look at this and say, hey, Patriots fans, you got the guy, but you still have a trash roster. Like, this team was among the worst in the league for a reason, and that's not going to turn itself around in one season, no matter who your head coach was going to be. I still think a rebuild more often than not. I realize there are exceptions to the rule. Everybody wants to be what Houston was a couple of years ago or what Washington is this year. Everybody's going to come at me with those very specific examples, and great. Like, there are exceptions to every rule. The rule is when your team sucks, it takes a minute to get out of the basement because you got to rebuild the entire roster. I think everything down to the staff, down to the training, down to the food, down to the process, down to the roster is going to be ripped apart by Mike Vrabel, like, rightfully so. I would just cry to Patriots fans right now, understand that you got your guy, but you did it in a dirty way, whatever that means, and also at least acknowledge the fact that your guy's going to have a bit of a rebuild in front of him. So, Mike Vrabel is known. Everyone you talk to will tell you that Mike Vrabel is known for his blunt honesty with everybody he deals with, yes, from players to staff. That's part of what they love. I think it's fair for us to be bluntly honest with Mike Vrabel and say, hey, at least acknowledge the fact that you got this job because your team didn't do exactly what the league says your team is supposed to do with the Rooney Rule, and they didn't even try. It's fair accountability that they didn't even try.
And with Vrabel coming in, and you mentioned how it's going to take a while. Like, I don't foresee them having a huge turnaround next year. The roster is not in place. We'll see what the offseason brings. I get that. But Vrabel's one of the few guys who you assume Robert Kraft is going to be patient with because of his track record, because of his history with the Patriots. But didn't we presume that for Gerard Mayo because of their relationship? But yes, I just think you look back now, and it's very obvious to everybody involved that Gerard Mayo got fired because they were very confident in landing Mike Vrabel. Yeah, like, that's it. I
agree.
That just has to be what happened. Like, they said, boy, we don't maybe not necessarily want to do this, but Mike Vrabel's there, and that would be he's the guy we want. Like, I get it, and it didn't get to that in a very professional way, I don't think, but they got there. So I just think it's a different deal. I agree with you in theory. It's funny, a former Patriots linebacker replacing a former Patriots linebacker. He only got 1 year, but this guy's going to get 5 years probably. But I just think the track record's stronger, and this was all just set up. And whatever conspiracy you want to throw, whatever date it was that they decided Mike Vrabel's going to be our next head coach, well, it finally got done now, and now they can go forward to Vrabel. And I do think he's going to get longer time than most coaches just because of all the history there.
I agree with all of that. Again, home run higher. I just want to say that loudly because everyone's going to kill me for killing the process. Home run higher. All right, so let's get to the home run game that we got over the course of the weekend. The Washington Commanders are moving on by way of a 23-20 win over Tampa Bay. This was all about one man, one story. I don't care. We can talk about the rest of it in a second. But Frank, this was yet again Jayden Daniels just saying, hey, by the way, if you haven't watched Washington this year, this is what I do. I put the team on my back, and I find like his ability to be patient when he needed to be patient, to take what the defense was giving him when he needed that, but then also to make huge key plays with his legs and his brain as the game went on. We watched a masterclass from a young quarterback, and I'm sitting here, Frank, saying, wow, as much as we talked about C.J. Stroud being historic last year, is Jayden Daniels actually having a better rookie year than C.J. did?
I feel kind of dumb, Fitz. Not the first time I felt dumb because I say a lot of dumb things. But we sat here a year ago, and I remember specifically saying, like, don't expect C.J. Stroud's rookie season to happen again anytime soon. That was crazy. It was an outlier. It was historic. It's the best rookie quarterback I've ever seen, et cetera, et cetera. And then a year later, sitting here, I think Jayden Daniels has been better. Like, it's unbelievable to me. That dude is so good, and he has come up big in so many clutch situations. We've seen rookie quarterbacks have success before, right? But even win a lot of games, go to the playoffs. But it's usually in that you're there along for the ride. Like Ben Roethlisberger. We think back to Ben Roethlisberger. His first year, what was he like? 13-1 in his starts with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But he was a kind of a caretaker for a really, really good Steelers team, right? This Commanders team, I'm sorry, I don't mean this to come off the wrong way, but I don't think this Commanders team's very good. I know they 12-5 and they're going on their final 8 in the playoffs. But I look at this roster, I say, this team just isn't that good. There's one dude carrying the entire franchise on his shoulders, and he's a rookie. Like, this is freaky stuff. Like, you forget watching him that he's a rookie quarterback. We're old men by now, right? But you don't even need to be that old to know that the rules in NFL football for years and years and generations and decades and all this stuff was rookie quarterbacks struggle. They usually don't make the playoffs, and they're definitely not going on the road to win a playoff game. Like, it has only happened 4 times ever, now counting Jayden Daniels, that a rookie quarterback in his first playoff start won. And this doesn't happen. And not only did he win, he was the guy. Like, fourth and 2 in the fourth quarter, throws a touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin, I believe it was, to give them the lead. Buccaneers come right back, tie the game. And it's just like, I've never felt this way watching a rookie quarterback where it was like 4:41 left on the clock. And I'm like, yeah, Jayden Daniels going to drive them downfield and win this game. I've never felt that way watching a rookie. Even C.J. Stroud, I really didn't feel that way about, where it's just like, he has this presence about him, this aura. He's a rookie, yes, but he's a superstar already. Jayden Daniels is unbelievable. I think he's a top 5 quarterback right now in the NFL. And that's crazy to say about a rookie. This is just unique stuff that we've just never seen before. I assume you agree with me on all this, Fitz, even though I'm completely over the top on a lot of this.
No, I mean, look, he was not only incredibly efficient and competent and calm and cool and just frankly delivered in every way as a passer you could ask him to. He was the team's leading rusher. And he didn't have a bang-up game. I think it was 13 carries for 36 yards. There was no rushing attack for the Washington Commanders in this game at all. They clearly have a need in that area, and it didn't matter. Like, hey, I sit here all the time and scream, you can't make a team one-dimensional. Well, you can make Washington one-dimensional because you can't take away the one dimension that wins for them, and that's Jayden Daniels. Like, his ability throughout this game to just feel level and feel cool, and again, feel patient with where he's going with the football. It never felt like, even when offense was at a premium in this football game, it never felt like he was pushing. And that, to me, is so remarkable remarkable for somebody that is young, that was on the road, that was in a situation where it would have been excusable to make a mistake. In fact, the only glaring mistake in this game came from Baker Mayfield fumbling a handoff that turned out to be the difference in this game. It was Baker Mayfield, who we've both been effusive in praise here, that made the one key mistake in the game, not the rookie playing in the playoffs on the road for the first time. Like, those are the sort of moments that cement your legacy. These are the moments that make everybody step back and take you differently, see you differently as a quarterback. I think this is one of those moments where the entire league has to step back and say, okay, no, he's not a star. He is a superstar. And to see that level in the playoffs just hits different.
Yeah, I was it the same way with you, though? When the Buccaneers tied it at 2020, I was just like, well, Jayden wins this game. It was the same for you?
Yeah, never a doubt. Never a doubt. And the way they managed the clock moving down, again, it comes back to patience. Like, they were just like, you know what? We'll just chew. We'll chew 3 yards at a time, and we'll worry about it later. And my God, it worked. And then thinking about late in the game when, frankly, they were facing the third down that would have turned into a field goal attempt, and he outruns a defender that had him.
Cansey just gets his towel. Like, I thought, like, was there a better, like, image than just the Buccaneers defensive lineman grabbing at Jayden Daniels, trying to make the tackle, and all he comes up with is the towel. And he's just basically chasing him with the towel in his hand. It's like, yeah, that's Jayden Daniels' rookie year right there. Like, the whole league is just behind, just grabbing it, grasping at him, and just coming up with his towel, and that's it. Like, and also, I think this is important too. Dan Quinn was very aggressive in this game with his fourth down calls.
Fourth down,
I mean, overly aggressive at times. Like, but I can't remember ever another rookie quarterback where the coach is like, yeah, of course we're going for it on fourth down. You try the rule for, look, again, we're both old men by now. The rule was always like, to protect your rookie quarterback. Don't ask him to do too much. Don't put him in pressure situations. Protect him wherever you can. And here's Dan Quinn just saying, this guy ain't a rookie. Like, he's a star, and I go for it on 4th and 2 with my star quarterback. The level of confidence that he has a rookie quarterback tells you all you need to know about Jayden Daniels.
Think about it. The broadcast kept showing us it's the best fourth down team in NFL history this year. Again, not Philadelphia with the tush push, not the brotherly shove. No, the best NFL team on fourth downs in NFL history is the Washington Commanders with their rookie quarterback. And in this game, I think you make such a big point on this, Frank. In this game, over and over and over again, it was 4th and short. And what'd they do? They had him in shotgun. Like, they weren't sitting there saying, you know what, we're just going to shove him over the line. We're going to put in, we're going to let our tight end take the snap. We're going to push everybody forward. Those are all smart strategies. Nothing against it. That's not what Quinn and Kingsbury were doing with Jayden. No, they were like, all right, we're going to play aggressive, put the ball in the best player's
player
hands.
on the field. We got the best player. We got the best player in this game. Like, what do we worry about? Like, which is unbelievable. And you talked about, and I do agree with you, that we're down to basically like 6 teams, right? That we really truly put in the circle of trust to win a Super Bowl. But there's this thing in the back of my mind saying, why can't Jayden Daniels go on the road and beat the Lions? Because he's like, again, normal rules aren't applying right now. This is a dude who's in that tier already of, I don't want to face that guy in the playoffs. Like, this guy could just take over a game at any point and just, do I think they're going to beat the Lions next week? No, not really. But would it stun me if we're sitting here next Sunday night going, oh my God, Jayden Daniels just went on the road and upset the number 1 seed of the Lions? Not at all. And there's never been a time I've thought that way about a rookie quarterback. Even Stroud last year. Stroud was awesome last year. He was so advanced as a passer, so advanced in his mental breakdown of the game. And I still think, we'll talk about him in a little bit too, obviously, from this weekend. I still think that guy's in there and is going to reemerge and be an MVP candidate. But when they went to Baltimore last year in the second round, I wasn't like, well, man, CJ might pull off this upset. I was like, nah, okay, this is where the ride ends. With Jayden next week, I'm like, I think the Lions win, but I think they're also sweating a little bit this week watching film. Like, this is a guy who's impossible to defend and nothing rattles him. And a lot of this comes from playing a ton of high-level football in college. The NIL thing works out perfectly because he gets this experience and these reps, and he's so far beyond what he should be. He didn't come out of school early and struggle along as a rookie because he needed the reps. No, he was ready-made to be in the NFL. We saw the same with Bo Nix, who he struggled today, but has had a great rookie season, obviously. But you just see Jayden Daniels looking like, if I didn't know any better, I was like, yeah, that guy's been in the league 6-7 years. Like, nothing rattles this kid at all. It's really, really impressive.
For anyone that thinks that the praise of Jayden Daniels is overreactionary, I would just say this. I think it's consistent because right now, if a quarterback comes out immediately in their rookie year and they struggle in a playoff game, we have no grace. We rarely give forgiveness. If Lamar Jackson doesn't play well in the playoff game, we just stack that on the narratives of like, well, we haven't seen him do it in the playoffs. This is what happens every time. And this isn't a new phenomenon. I mean, Steve Young acknowledged what it felt like to finally win a Super Bowl, to get the Joe Montana monkey off his back, right? Like, we've seen this for generations. We are going to, over the course of this show and over the course of the entire offseason, we are going to ask a lot of very hard questions about Justin Herbert that he has earned, right? So I think it's in this moment, for anyone that says, so stop overreacting, it's one game. I would say we overreact every time to one game that's negative. So shouldn't we keep that same energy when it's this positive? When you come out and play as clean, and when you come out as play as in control as Daniels did throughout the course of this game, and you are so clearly the reason that your team won, I think that is the exact moment that we stop saying, well, wait, let's wait. No, this is the exact moment you tip the cap. You look at him and you say, good sir, you have earned every ounce of this. Whatever praise Jayden Daniels gets right now and moving forward is earned from this playoff performance.
Absolutely. And and for those people, there are going to be a lot of, because anytime there's a lot of praise for a quarterback, it's like, oh God, like Tony Romo was getting a bunch of stuff today for his love for Josh Allen during the game. And I get it. I do. So we're sitting here gushing about Jayden Daniels, right? And we're going to all season.
Josh was great. Come on.
He was. But it's just, people this is their natural reaction now in this era of like, quit talking about how great this guy is. And they're going to say, it's just one game. It's not just one game. It's the Monday night game against Cincinnati early in the season. It's the Hail Mary. It's him putting the team on his back and beating the Eagles with a touchdown with 13 seconds to go, or however long was left in that game. Winning in overtime against the Atlanta Falcons. He has done this over and over and over again. Clutch situations just don't bother him. And that's just freaky from a rookie. You just don't see this. A rookie quarterback is not supposed to carry a franchise, a flawed roster on the road in a playoff game against a Buccaneers team they're not a fraud or anything like that. They won at Detroit this year. They took the Kansas City Chiefs to overtime this year. The Buccaneers are a pretty good football team. And the one difference in this game in the entire Commanders season is number 5, a quarterback. Like, that's the one thing that has turned the Commanders from the second worst team in football that was drafting number 2 last year to a team that has won 13 games and counting the preseason. Like, this is just, we've never seen really anything like this. And I know I said this a year ago, I was with CJ Stroud, but Jayden Daniels has topped that. I never saw that coming.
Also, let's acknowledge, just real quick here, clearly CJ Stroud was the better draft pick in his own draft. It is clear where we sit right now today that Jayden Daniels was the best of the quarterbacks, and the Washington Commanders have figured out how to make the best of the quarterback they have in ways that everybody else that drafted the quarterback has. This, to your point, you've said over and over and over again, this could turn out to be the greatest NFL quarterback draft class we have ever seen in a single year. And I think you're right, but I think in that same breath, I can say it is clear that the best of those quarterbacks today, as we sit with a body of evidence we have right now, it is clear that Jayden Daniels was the best of all of those quarterbacks selected.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't know how you could argue otherwise. That doesn't mean Caleb can't be better over the next 5 years. We'll see. We'll see where this is all going. But right now, as we sit here, it hasn't been. It definitely has not been. And I think if you ask the Bears at an honest moment, they take a do-over in a second, because this kid is Daniels is just unbelievable. It's fairly it's crazy. It's awesome. It is great for the game to have a star like this. I enjoy watching him every time he takes the field. Like, this is a really, really fun story for the NFL. Now, on the flip side, I don't want to ignore the Buccaneers, because we've just went on and on about Jayden Daniels. The Buccaneers kind of blew this game. Like, we do have to acknowledge that. Like, how do you fumble that snap fumble the exchange on the Jalen McMillan jet sweep or fake or whatever they were trying to do? Like, that's an inexcusable mistake. And then they have 3rd and inches after that. Like, Baker did a great job driving them back downfield, really not letting it affect them. They're down 20-17 at that point, and they have 3rd and inches deep in Commanders territory. And Graham Barton, really, really good rookie center for them, just, I guess, forgets the snap count. Like, he snaps it, and the rest of the offense wasn't ready. So Baker kind of hesitates and gives the ball to Bucky Irving. He gets dropped for a loss, and they kind of have to settle for a field goal. But if you're a Buccaneers fan, you're not sitting here saying, Jayden Daniels, what can we do? You're sitting there saying, we blew that game. Like, that was absolutely self-inflicted, and the Buccaneers should feel like they should have won that game.
But there's still, if you're Tampa Bay, and this is a theme also we're going to have throughout the course of this show. If you're Tampa Bay, you got to look in the mirror and ask yourself some hard questions. Because Tampa Bay clearly is good enough to win a bad division every year. They're clearly good enough to be a really good football team. They're also clearly not in the same category of the Eagles, of the Lions, of the Vikings right now. And they got to figure that out. I mean, at some point, if you're Tampa, you got to look around and say, how do we take where we are and take that next meteoric leap? It's not, I mean, now you've answered the question, is Baker going to be consistent year in and year out? Yes. You have a consistent star quarterback. Okay, so let's stop asking that question. Now let's start asking the question, what are you going to do to actually win a Super Bowl? Because if this Tampa Bay roster, like if they look in the mirror, I think they're going to sit here and realize that while they're built to be very good, like many teams we're talking about over the course of this weekend, they're built to be good. They're not built to be great. And that's
Right.
the toughest spot you can be in.
I do honestly think they're close. I do, because they had a great draft class this year. McMillan, Irving, Barton. I mean, they hit on a lot of guys. They've done really well on the player acquisition side of things. Again, they beat the Lions this year. They should have beat the Chiefs. So Todd Bowles goes for 2. Like, I think that they're able to compete against the top teams in the NFL. That's a good sign for them moving forward. Now they're going to have another good offseason like everybody else. But I do view the Buccaneers as being pretty darn close with another good offseason. Maybe they do make that leap into that next tier. They certainly have competed hard and well against the top teams in the NFL, both number 1 seeds in each conference. So I think they're pretty close, but you're right. Like you could see like, okay, this team's not a Super Bowl contender yet. And there are some strides they need to make to get there, but I do think they're on the cusp. Again, a really good offseason maybe gets them there.
All right. We're going to break down the rest of the games, including what it means for Jordan Love, because there's some questions. We'll ask him. But first, we're going to take a quick break.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
Frank, I feel like I don't get to plant the I told the world so flag, but I do get to go one step closer to the top of the I told the world so mountain when it comes to one Jordan Love, because the Philadelphia Eagles beat Green Bay 22-10 in a game that frankly could have gotten far more out of control. The score could have been different if Saquon doesn't just lay down on the ground with smart football play. But Jordan Love in this game, 20 of 33 with 3 picks, one of them not necessarily the worst for him, but 212 yards in this one. And I just want to remind everybody that we took 8 games last year and decided that Jordan Love was going to be a superstar. And all I've asked for the entire offseason is, hey, I'd just like to see a little bit more, a little proof of concept. There have been moments that he's made me look like a fool this year. And there's moments that he's made me look right. And the fact that this happened in the playoffs where you have 3 picks in a game against a Philly team where you knew you were going to have to play clean football. I know there's a lot of yeah buts and other reasons that Green Bay won this game. I'm just saying, Frank, in the world of I'd like to see more before I anoint Jordan Love one of the kings of the NFL moving forward, I think this game actually, I get to take another step towards the top of the mountain and say, hey, Jordan Love, we're looking at you because you look like you might be okay and not great. And they're not paying you to be okay and not great.
Yeah, he was crowned after last season, and the way it ended, and it did look sustainable more than just a hot streak. But you were very skeptical about, hey, let's just wait and see. And what we've seen out of Jordan Love this year is it's good. Like, I don't think he's plummeted or anything like that.
No,
I think he's a good quarterback. But like, for example, would you rather have him or Jayden Daniels right now? I'd take Jayden Daniels 10 times out of 10. And that's not what we were saying a year ago. We were saying Jordan Love's a top 3 quarterback. I mean, people are just trying to one-up each other with the takes, right? Like, oh, Jordan Love, take him first if we redrafted the NFL. Like, there's just a lot of really, really high praise for Jordan Love after the way last season ended. And then the season just was a little off. And today was a good example of that. Like, the first 2 interceptions he threw are just not interceptions. You see a true top-level quarterback make that often. He throws it. I mean, Darius Slay, it just blanketed downfield. It makes a pretty easy interception. Zach Bond, he never saw Zach Bond on the interception he made right over the middle of the field. You just can't have that, especially.
And that was key that game. Late in the half, too. Like, that was so key. Like, it just swung the game.
And we've seen, like, Baker Mayfield turned it over a lot during the regular season, but he also made a lot of big plays to make up for it. Jordan Love really did nothing in this game. Like, I was surprised he had 212 yards. I'll be honest with you. I was like, really? Wow. Okay. It seemed more like a 120-yard type of game. Like, there was just never any consistency to that offense. They were bad most of this game, other than Josh Jacobs' one unbelievable beast mode type of run that set up his touchdown. The Packers just got nothing going. Now, Philly kept them in this game by not being good themselves. I thought Jalen Hurts was pretty poor in this game himself, but the Eagles are just on a higher plane. And Jordan Love, again, I don't know what you think of Jordan Love if you're the Packers. You're so confident that he's obviously your guy, and not like you're trading him or anything. But you do, I think, have to wonder, okay, is this the top 5-ish guy we thought we had? Or is he more like 10th? Like that type of tier where you could still win with them for sure. I mean, they were really close to beating San Francisco in the divisional round last year. They can obviously make a run with him, but I don't know if you look at him as the guy who you could just put the entire franchise on his shoulders if he's that level of a player.
And here's the thing. I know that I'm risk averse and I like proof of concept at the quarterback position. You know these things about me. But part of that is because my life as a fan. I went in and watched an MVP caliber season for Derek Carr, and we all turned around and said, oh my God, Derek Carr is going to be the next whatever. And then you found out that was just a blip on the radar. That was one season where everything aligned. I look at Jordan Love and think that by the time this is all said and done right now, he's given us enough proof of concept that he can be a top guy or that he might just be a mid guy, which reminds me a lot of Derek Carr. The guys that get stuck in the middle in the NFL are the guys that constantly remind you that they have a little bit of great in them, but also a little bit of suck in them. And then you end up with this like middle ground up and down. The best of the best may have bad games. They don't have bad runs. And the best of the best are judged harshly when they have bad games in the playoffs. This was a bad game in the playoff. Also, I think you make a good point. Jalen Hurts also not very good in this game. The Eagles won because the MVP is Saquon in this situation. I just say it again. Like, there's nothing anybody was going to do to stop Saquon in this game. The Eagles offense is able to convert short yardage situations, and they've got a great running back that finds yards where there aren't any. I just have to take this moment and yet again praise Saquon because he is, to me, the reason that the Eagles won this game on offense, particularly.
Yeah, I agree. He's just having an unbelievable season. And also, like we're sitting here piling on Jordan Love a lot, but the Eagles defense is legit. Like, they're so good. Like, this is a hard defense to go against. Their secondary is just under 180 since the end of last year. You just don't get explosive plays against this secondary. Obviously, their linebackers have been fantastic. Nakobe Dean did get hurt today. We'll see what comes of that. Their defensive line is good. Like, the defense for the Philadelphia Eagles is really good. One thing about the Packers before we move on, because we just talked about the Buccaneers and talking about, how close are they, whatever. How close are the Packers? Because this is a team to me that they went 0-6 against the Lions, Vikings, and Eagles this year. And it never really seemed like, all right, this is an elite team. But they were an 11-win team with the youngest roster in football. It's the second youngest roster, I believe, ever to make the playoffs. The first youngest was last year's Packers team. So it seems like they should be an ascending team, but I look at them also and say, do they have the top level talent to compete with the Eagles and the Lions? Or are they just going to be this kind of, this is what they are? They're going to be a good team that might not break on through to the Super Bowl unless everything goes right. You have one of those magical runs. I'm starting to question that a little bit. Like, all it takes is one great offseason acquisition. You get a blue chip player in there, it turns kind of everything around. Okay, I get that. But as the Packers are constructed right now, I'm like, is this team good enough to really be one of the top 5 consistently in the NFL and be a Super Bowl contender every year? And I don't know that the answer is yes. I'm not going to say it's no, but I also can't sit here and tell you it's yes.
I don't know that we got a definitive answer because, hear me out. These are the teams that they beat this year. I'll list some of them here. The Colts stink.
Bad.
The Titans stink. Ugh. They beat the Rams early in the season when the Rams were
really struggling. Yeah. But still,
they beat the Cardinals, who turns out they stink. They beat the Jags, who stink. They beat the Bears, who stink. They beat the 49ers.
And that was only on a blocked field goal, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they beat the 49ers, who stink. They beat the Dolphins, who stink. They beat the Seahawks. That's fine. They beat the Saints, who stink. I mean, that when you start thinking about 8 of those wins just from that, it's like, I don't know. Like, did we really get any proof of concept there that makes you think this is like against those opponents? I don't know how we're supposed to make any sweeping generalization. Like, you can only play who you play in the NFL. Anybody can beat great cliche. But if we're being honest for a second, the Packers did what they had to do this year. They beat up on bad teams. And then, unfortunately, they lost enough close games to good teams that we thought maybe they were actually good. But the reality of it is, when they had to play the best of the best, they were not the best of the best. They're not in that echelon. They're not. If we want to take the upper tier and put them at one table at Thanksgiving, then you got a whole other table on the other side of the restaurant. The Packers are at that one.
Yeah, I think so. And it kind of mirrors a quarterback, right? Like we're sitting here saying, well, is he one of those guys or is he just kind of not Derek Carr level, but like, one of those, okay, he could have a good year when you got the pieces around him, but he's not going to Patrick Mahomes this thing either. So I don't know. We'll see with the Packers. They're a very, very interesting team coming into next season, I think. Now on the Eagles, real quick, I think that getting back to Hurts, he's got to play better than that. And maybe it was rust. Maybe it was, he missed 2 games at the end of the year and most of a third with that concussion. And it looked that way. Like he was just off most of this game. There wasn't really anything going on. He settled down a little bit in the second half. So maybe that's a good sign going forward. But I don't know. The Eagles are going to play either the Vikings or the Rams. And I think if Jalen Hurts plays this poorly, yes, the defense can carry him to an ugly win. We saw that. But I think Hurts needs to play a lot better going forward. I'm not, I saw some people on Twitter talk about like, just start Tanner McKee or just go to Kenny Pickett. Like, well, let's not do that.
No, yeah.
No, this is the overreaction time of year. I get it. Let's not get crazy though. Jalen Hurts is still like a guy who almost won MVP 2 years ago. He's awesome. And he almost won a Super Bowl by himself because he was so good in that game. But he needs to play better. There's no question. I don't think that they're going to Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts playing like he did today.
Yeah. And without having seen the Monday night game right now, I would be inclined to think that whichever team comes out of that game, I'm not sure that I wouldn't pick them against the Eagles if the Eagles don't play better offensively, especially if it's the Vikings. I think the Vikings can beat the Eagles the way they played today. All right, so let's get to one of the more impressive efforts we saw today. The Bills 31, Denver 7. 2 things can be true here. I don't think that this is some sort of statement about the Broncos season. I just want to take a second to say the Broncos were so far ahead of schedule. The Broncos defense kept them in this game for a while. I think Bills fans were a little nervous. I was watching with some Bills fans. They were nervous for much of this game because there are so many things that the Broncos are just ahead on. So congratulations to the Broncos for having a great season. You just happen to take on Josh Allen, who is at this point this year just unbelievable. It is truly unbelievable to watch. I think the 2 best players in the league this year have been Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. That's not a hot take. I've said I think they both should be co-MVPs, and I think over the course of the weekend we saw why. I mean, Josh Allen, to me, just the way he just lifts this team, and again, I talked a lot about patience. I want a quarterback that knows the right times to take his shots and then also knows when to just make sure they're moving the ball. The absolute control of the clock in this game, to me, Frank, the Bills showed, you know what? We will just grind it out and beat the snot out of you for the course of the entire 60 minutes, and I dare you to stop us. This was against a good Broncos defense. That was a hell of an effort in controlling the entire tempo of a football game.
Yeah, absolutely. I did think it almost was a detriment to them at some point because you're looking up saying, boy, it's only 13-7. Like, they haven't put them away yet. Like, I mean, the Broncos stuck in this game for a long time because all these Bills drives were 11, 12 plays, and they're getting field goals at the end. And you're like, oh, they're letting the Broncos hang around. And then eventually, yeah, the avalanche came late third quarter and in the fourth quarter. I thought the play of the game, obviously, was 4th down. It's still just a 13-7 game at that point. And Josh Allen just scrambles around, buys time, and hits a sliding Ty Johnson in the end zone. Now, everybody seems to think it was very clear that he was in bounds. I'm not still. I'm like, I don't know how you could be so definitive about, yes, of course he was in bounds. Like, I don't know what exactly you could pinpoint when he had control of that pass and if his leg wasn't out of bounds at that point, but the call stood. And one of the great plays of Josh Allen's great season that might end up winning him.
And one of the gutsiest calls. I mean, on 4th
yes.
and nobody would have expected that. Nobody expected him to heave the ball across his body to the back of the end zone on 4th and short. My God.
Yeah, but he makes plays like that. That's who he is. I thought the Bills defense played really well in this game. Look, the first drive, they come out, Bo Nix hits Troy Franklin for the long touchdown. You're like, whoa, okay, we might have something cooking here in Buffalo. And then they didn't score again. Like, Buffalo shut off their water after that. And you're right, this is not some referendum on the Broncos. Like, they're not the Bills. Okay, like no big deal. Like, they're on the right path. They got their quarterback, got a really good coach. They're going to get out of this cap mess created by Russell Wilson, and they're going to add some guys. They're going to be very good. They just happen to play in a really, really tough division, which is a hindrance to them. But the Broncos are fine, and the Bills just crushed them. Like, this was an impressive performance. And, I mean, now they got, like, Bills-Ravens. I know we'll talk about the Ravens in a second here, but, like, Bills Ravens is as good of a divisional matchup as you're ever going to find. Like, somebody pointed this out to me on Twitter, and I didn't have a great answer for it. Has there ever been this type of playoff game with two quarterbacks who are both, even early in their careers, relatively speaking, chasing a Super Bowl already? Because they almost feel behind, right? Like we're always talking about Lamar hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, and Josh Allen hasn't made a Super Bowl yet, and all this kind of stuff, even though they're not even 30 years old. These two guys who are going to finish 1-2 MVP in some order, meeting with this huge legacy game. I can't, this is pretty unique for a divisional round matchup with just all of the storylines involved. I guess they might just be playing for the right to go get beat by Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game, but a really, really compelling matchup for next Sunday night.
Yeah, and look, again, I want to stress how good the Broncos defense is, because
very good. Yes.
When you look at the numbers here, Josh Allen was 20 of 26 for 272 yards with 2 touchdowns, no picks. Absolutely a clean game. Important to their, Khalil Shakir was the only wide receiver that picked up more than 4 looks out of it. He got 6 catches. Everybody else was 3 or less. So spreading the ball around, which is what he does, which is almost impossible to take down. And then at the same time, James Cook went 23 for 120. The team rushed 44 times for 210 yards. The final score could have been even more of a blowout. To your point, in the first half particularly, they were comfortable minimizing possessions. And when you minimize possessions, what you do is you put so much strain on your offense, you better be efficient. You better not settle for field goals, because we're not going to touch the ball very many times. But it was working because their defense managed to hold down the fort, right? But I think the effect of that over the course of 4 quarters is that by the time I got to the second half, you had a gassed Broncos defense that had been on the field for the entire time, just getting run all over. You see that and you think, look, I know that the game that we're going to see next week is Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. My real question on that is which one of these defenses is going to be able to handle just getting the snot kicked out of them every single running play, because these two offenses are not really Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. These two offenses are, we're going to destroy you with physicality, and the minute you commit to trying to slow that down, now our other world quarterback is going to make you decide whether you're going to defend him running or throwing. You're going to make the wrong decision, and they're going to make you pay. Like, this is such a wild formula for success, because I would argue that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson having 2 of the great seasons that we can ever remember, 2 great MVP candidates, but part of the reason they're great is their offenses are built to beat you a million different ways on top of just the quarterback. And we saw that this weekend. The 2 most dominant performances were from the 2 most complete offenses that also happen to have 2 amazing quarterbacks.
Yeah, and it's a great point in that both of these offenses are built to where the quarterback doesn't have to throw it 50 times. Like, that's just, they don't have to, because James Cook could get it done on the ground. Derrick Henry sure could get it done on the ground, but they can. You're right. If they need to go into a game and say, all right, well, this is a game where Josh is going to have to throw for 400 yards. Yep, he could clearly do that. Same with Lamar. So, yes, I think the way the Bills' offense has morphed since the middle of last season, when they fired their offensive coordinator and brought on Joe Brady, to really pound it on the ground and take some pressure off of Josh Allen. We always talk about, Josh Allen has to do everything. It's true to some extent, but that running game also takes a lot of pressure off of him. And I think that has really helped him grow as a player, that helped the Bills grow as a team, become a very, very strong Super Bowl contender this year. And yes, I mean, going into this game, we're going to talk about Lamar versus Josh and MVP and all this kind of stuff. When in reality, like, James Cook and Derrick Henry are just as big a deal to this game. Who can establish a ground game? Because once that starts to leak, once James Cook is running for 120 yards, you're done. Like, that, you have no chance at that point, because you just have to worry about, stopping that leak. And then Josh Allen's going to kill you. It's just a what do you do type of situation. That's what makes the Ravens so tough. That's what makes the Bills so tough. I thought that today was an excellent example of why the Bills are this complete. The defense was awesome. The running game helped out a lot. And then Josh Allen was just Josh Allen. Like, he wasn't Superman in this game, but you look at the stat sheet at the end and say, yep, that's an MVP candidate right there. So really, really impressive performance by the Bills.
Also quick, I will just say, what a life for Joe Brady. When you have a quarterback, things are good. He was the passing game coordinator at LSU for Joe Burrow's incredible national championship season. Then he goes to Carolina, where things were a little off the rails. But it doesn't matter.
Everything's off the rails in Carolina. That's just Carolina.
He goes from Joe Burrow to Josh Allen. There's worse ways to live as a coach. Yeah, right. All right, we'll get to the Saturday games, but first we're going to take a quick break. All right, we get to have the spiciest conversation of the day now. All right, this is where things get heated because nobody wants to have a weird conversation about Tomlin, but the Ravens win 28-14. The Ravens ran for 299 yards, a new franchise postseason record. I think importantly here, Lamar Jackson put the entire Steelers defensive line's heads in a blender, right? Like the number of times they couldn't figure out if he was holding the ball, pulling the ball, throwing the ball, handing the ball off. Like he absolutely had Watt trying to figure out where the ball was half the time. Like it was a masterclass by Lamar Jackson. But now, and Derrick Henry, by the way, 26 carries, 186 yards. But now, we get a Steelers team that yet again just got their ass whooped in the playoffs. And I'm seeing smart people turn around and say, do they need a new voice in Pittsburgh? I've got a statement to make on this, Frank. But first, you wrote a little bit about it for Yahoo. I saw some of the tweets coming out about it. Your thoughts on Tomlin and the Steelers?
By the way, the occasion of our 200th episode of Inside Coverage, one of the major themes of this show is always two things can be true. We try to have some nuance here. And I look at this situation, and we talked about this a little bit last week. Mike Tomlin has a Hall of Fame resume. Like, he does. Like, he has a better winning percentage than Sean McVay, everybody's superstar, right? And a bunch of other guys. I think he has a better winning percentage than Bill Walsh in his career. And he has a Super Bowl ring. It's very long ago. I get that. But here's a guy, there's something to be said for making the playoffs every season. And the Steelers team is not a 10-win type of team. It's not. Like, if you say, like, well, Tomlin's holding them back, you really think the Steelers should have won 12, 13 games this year? Like, no, that's ridiculous. Like, he got the most out of them for the first 13 games of the season when they went 10-3. But I do also get the flip side where Steelers fans are like, we're not close. We're not close to winning a Super Bowl right now. They would rather take their chance on you hire somebody who's worse than Tomlin. And by the way, there's a very, very, very good chance your next coach is not going to be as good as Mike Tomlin. But they're willing to take the chance. If you move on from Tomlin, trade him, fire him, whatever you're going to do. And the next guy stinks rather than just being stuck in this rut. Because we watch this game. The Steelers and Ravens are on different planets as football teams right now. You could have played that game 50 times and the Steelers were not going to win it. I get it was 28-14, and that doesn't look like much of a blowout. There was never a moment on Saturday night where I thought the Steelers were going to win that game or even challenge for that game. It was just the Ravens are way, way up here and the Steelers are down here. Good enough to make the playoffs, but nowhere near the level of a Ravens or a Bills or a Chiefs or anybody like that. So you're kind of on this merry-go-round of okay, what do you do? Like, do you fire a guy who, again, has a better winning percentage of Bill Walsh and a Super Bowl ring and has never had a losing season in 18 years, as we all know, and just take your chance on the unknown? Like, that seems crazy. But it also seems crazy to be like, well, let's just keep trying to get better somehow when there's no evidence that you're a Super Bowl contender. I don't know what to do here. I don't know what the right move for the Steelers is. I think ultimately it's continue with Tomlin and hope he figure out the quarterback situation. I'm interested to hear what you have to say, because this is one of those where I shrug and I say I see this from both sides.
Life sometimes is simple, Frank. And the simple truth in the AFC is you cannot win a Super Bowl if you don't have a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. That's the new rule in the AFC. I looked. I have the list. Here are the names of the quarterbacks that have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl over the course of the last 20 years. All right?
Okay.
Brady, Hall of Famer.
Great. Yep.
Manning, Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Roethlisberger, probably a Hall of Fame level quarterback. We'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow, who so far has proven to be one of the best in the league, and Joe Flacco. So you're one outlier in the last 20 years. The one quarterback that has gone to the Super Bowl, just gone, not even won it, for the AFC in the last 20 years that is not a Hall of Famer is Joe Flacco. The lesson we learn from that, especially right now, when we're talking about Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Right now, four of the best quarterbacks in the NFL are all in the AFC. The harsh reality that Steelers fans need to hear is that winning a Super Bowl has nothing to do with their coach. The only way you are going to win a Super Bowl, not just now, but for the foreseeable future in the AFC, is if you actually have a Hall of Fame level quarterback. If you don't, you're up a creek. So Steelers fans might sit here and say, we got to make a change. We got to make a change. Okay, cool. Whatever coach you bring in, I don't care what coach you bring in. You can bring in the best. Pick your coach, whatever coach you want in the entire league. It will not change the reality that the only way you win a Super Bowl is if you beat Mahomes, you beat Josh Allen, you beat Joe Burrow, you beat Lamar Jackson. Right?
By the way, the last two are in your division. Yeah.
Sorry, Steelers fans. This is just the reality you have to accept. You are screwed as a franchise. Your best hope is that you get lucky one year, somehow everything bounces your way, and that gets you to the Super Bowl. That has nothing to do with Tomlin. So now you got to ask yourself, do I have a coach that can at least get me to the dance every year? Because if you're in the dance, you got a chance, all right? That is Tomlin. He will always get you to the dance. If you want a quarterback, sorry, this also isn't the year to need a quarterback. So there's nothing that's going to change the reality next year. At this point, a move just to make a move won't change the most important thing that is happening for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They don't have a championship quarterback, and you cannot win in the AFC without a championship quarterback.
That's all fair. And I do tend to agree. Like, if you give Tomlin a great quarterback, I think our conversation's a lot different right now. I don't think we're talking about them eliminated in the wild card round, but I mean, isn't there something to this? Has been 8 seasons without a playoff win. And most of the times they've made the playoffs in those 8 seasons, they've gotten blasted. Like, it has not been close.
Because they're not great. They didn't belong. Like, Frank, they're not a good enough team. They're not a play. Look, what we assign, when we say you're a playoff team, we have to understand that we assign a certain level of competence we expect from that team. So I understand that technically they are a playoff team. I can watch, right? But when you ask yourself, did the Steelers look like a playoff team for the last month? No. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have an offense. They got a wide receiver that's a head case that you can't trust to catch footballs. Like, they don't have the competent things that a team should. Like, they got their ass kicked because they're not good. They're in the playoff because their coach managed to get them there even though they're not good enough. Like, this is one of those weird moments where I'm not surprised by the outcome. What do we expect? Just because they got to the playoffs didn't mean they were a good team. They got their butts kicked by a team that's actually a good team.
Look, this collapse was real, though, and I do think Tomlin has to answer to some of this. Like, they did not lead a football game from December 8th to the end of the year. Like, that just blows my mind that the Pittsburgh Steelers did not hold one lead for the last month of the season that they played. Like, how's that possible? And they just looked like, Kirk Herbstreit had a line that everybody has, kind of recited since then, but like, where's the fight? And I had to agree. Like, the Steelers didn't look like they really were that interested in trying to win that game. Like, it was such a flat performance that you're just like, isn't this on Tomlin a little bit? Like, again, like, I have such respect for Mike Tomlin, so I don't want to be like, you got to fire Tomlin because he didn't win a playoff game. Like, that's kind of stupid too. But I do get Steelers fans' frustrations here of this team is just, what good is it to just make the wild card and get blown out in the wild card round? Like, that's not what they're used to. That's not what that franchise is used to. And that's not your goal. Like, your goal is win Super Bowls, and they're not close to that right now. Now, you're right. Quarterback just solves a lot of that. If they had Joe Burrow, again, we wouldn't be talking about the Steelers getting eliminated.
Hell, if they had Jayden Daniels, if they had CJ Stroud, if they had, like, just looking at the other quarterback, if they had Lamar in their own division, like, you just look at the quarterbacks all the way across the board. Like, if they had any of the other quarterbacks that are currently playing this year in the playoffs, I would have trusted them more to get a win. Any of the other quarterbacks.
I think you're right. Baker. Like,
give him Baker. Yeah. And this is where I guess you say, well, they should have gone out and gotten Baker. I think there's a lot of teams that should have gone out and brought in Baker. I don't think any of us would have understood. I don't think anybody in the league thought that after Baker bounced from team to team that Baker was going to be the resurgent quarterback he is. I think a lot of the league missed on, and that's fair. That's fair. If we want to hold them accountable for missing on some of these free agent acquisition quarterbacks, maybe they should have gone after Sam Darnold. Like, maybe these are fair things to say, but I think any of those quarterbacks with Tomlin right now, I would have trusted them a hell of a lot more to be able to get a win. And frankly, I think Tomlin would have been every bit as capable of getting the same result as Harbaugh did with the Chargers, and we're sitting here giving Harbaugh effusive praise.
Yeah, you're right. Like, yes, ultimately that's where I come down on. You make great arguments, and I agree with many of them. I just understand the frustration of just this hamster wheel. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're really not close, and you can see that. But a lot of us are Ravens. Let's talk about the Ravens a little bit because
God, they're good.
My goodness, like I keep saying, well, how are you going to beat the Bills when they're playing this well? Well, how are you going to beat the Ravens? Like when they get Derrick Henry going like he is, like it just changes everything. Like how do you defend that team? I don't even understand. Like defensive coordinators just like, all right, if I take away Derrick Henry, well, Lamar might beat me as a passer, or he's going to beat me as a rusher because he does both at this unbelievable level. Like I just don't. What are the keys to stopping the Ravens offense? I don't know. Like you just kind of throw up your hands and hope Lamar has an off day. That's about all you can hope for.
That's why I am as excited for Bills Ravens as I've been for any playoff game since we saw Patriots Colts. Because you knew when you saw Patriots Colts and you saw Brady Manning, you knew it wasn't going to be one side lost the game. What you were going to see were the two best teams in football randomly playing in the AFC in the playoffs because, frankly, they're just in the same conference. And you knew that you were going to get absolute execution from both of them. You were going to get the best of both of them. And at the end of the game, you were going to feel worn out, even if you didn't have a rooting interest, just from watching that level of intensity for that many hours. I think that's what we're going to get. I think we're going to get the game of the year in this one. We are going to get that epic, can't miss, oh my God, watch every second of it, because these two teams have just been the entire year getting ready for this moment. The Ravens defense playing much better than it did the beginning of the season. I will give them credit. They're going to have to play. They're going to have to step up against the Bills. But my God, that offense just looks so unstoppable. And they did that without Zay Flowers. Like
I know, right? Yeah,
it's wild. Watching this Ravens offense is watching art.
It really is. Like, and I think the Ravens need Zay Flowers back to beat the Bills.
I do too.
Maybe not. We'll see. But we saw this game earlier this year, and the Ravens blew them out. Like that was not a competitive game. I think it was 35-10. And I think it's going to be a lot more competitive, obviously. But that just goes to show how good the Ravens are. That they could take a good Bills team to the woodshed like that. That was an impressive performance back then. I think it was week 4 or week 5, whenever that was. So I the only thing I hope for whichever of these teams is just because I like new blood. I'm sorry, Chiefs fans. I'm not trying to hate on you. I hope they don't like punch each other out in this round. And then you get the AFC Championship game and it's almost like a letdown, you know, you can't like play at that level again 2 straight weeks against a great Chiefs team. I hope we get the best out of whoever wins this game next week and in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs, so the Chiefs advance. The Texans aren't a pushover, I guess. So just great theater. Like let's see these two teams face each other. The best 2 quarterbacks in the NFL this season. It's going to be so much fun. I can't, you're right. Like the same thing. I can't remember a divisional round game or many playoff games, period, where I was more excited than just to see what these teams could do. There's such mirror images of each other in many ways, with the great quarterback and a running game coming along and defense playing at a really high level. Good coaches on both sides, I think. Just looking forward to this one.
You mentioned the Texans aren't a pushover. Most people didn't think that they would get out of the first round.
I didn't.
They kicked the snot out of the Chargers, 32-12. I think this is a funny stat line. Justin Herbert, 14-32, 1 touchdown, 4 picks. It's funny to me because Ladd McConkey, 9 catches for 197 yards. Like, Ladd went off, but the real story of this, like, we'll get to, let's give the Texans some flowers for a second. The Texans defense was suffocating. They had Herbert wildly confused. This Texans defense is, whatever we thought of the Texans this year that they weren't, the defense is far better than any of us expected they would be.
This Texas defense hasn't, where was it all season? Like,
It
wasn't like, oh, yeah, that's right, the Texans have a great defense. We knew they have a couple of great pass rushers. They have a really good cornerback in Derek Stingley. But this Texas defense had not played at this level all season. And they had their game of their lives on Saturday afternoon. This was just an impressive performance. They just took it to the Chargers in every single way. And if it wasn't for, I know you can't just do this all the time, but if it wasn't for the one long touchdown pass from Herbert to McConkey, like, their entire offense was just trash. And Justin Herbert played like trash, but a lot of that is the Texans defense.
Let's get there. Let's
real
get there,
quick, though. I do need to say, like, we're all going to be just penciling in the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. I get that.
Yeah.
But if the Texans, I think the Texans pass rush is a big thing here. What have the Chiefs struggled with all year? They've struggled at the tackle position. Now, moving Joe Thuney out from guard to left tackle has really calmed that situation down. But if the Texans could get that pass rush cranked up with Will Anderson, Daniel Hunter, like, all of a sudden it's a different game for the Chiefs. I think this has the ability anyway to be a really interesting game. Even as much as the Texans have struggled this year, you could kind of see watching them Saturday, like, it's still in there somewhere. That team we thought was going to be a Super Bowl contender this year, there's that possibility that they could have this unbelievable game against the Chiefs and make things really interesting.
Two things you can't beat: Andy Reid commercials and Andy Reid after a bye. That's all I'm saying.
No,
let's see how that plays. Let's get to the other side of this, though, because Justin Herbert was terrible in this football game. And now Justin Herbert has had a couple of playoff losses. And I want to add one game to this. Remember the finale against the Raiders where the Chargers had the opportunity to go to the playoffs if they won, and they lost that game. I sort of include that in my mind as a playoff game. There have been plenty of opportunities for Justin Herbert to stand up and stand out in the playoffs, and he simply hasn't. And all I'm saying is that we rush to judgment for every single quarterback that doesn't look quite good enough. Like we're desperate to figure out, Brock Purdy has a bad playoff game last year. It's like, well, Brock really sucks, right? Like we look at Lamar, doesn't matter if you're an MVP. What's his record in the playoffs? Like that's all anybody ever wants to say. And then we turn around like, oh, Justin Herbert, man, he's one of the best in the league. Like based on what? This is a terrible outing for Justin Herbert. And on the 4 picks, one of them not his fault at all, but some of them were inexcusable throws that made absolutely no sense. I know there aren't a lot of weapons for this Chargers offense, but that doesn't change the fact that Justin Herbert was terrible in this game. And any other quarterback plays that poorly in the playoffs, it's the story of the offseason. But for Justin Herbert, it's just like water off a duck's back. It just seems like he's immune to any of this criticism, and I don't understand it.
I will say, it's kind of funny because I thought after this game that was a theme for a lot of people. Like Justin Herbert was terrible in this game, and he deserves to get criticized a bit, which is so funny because I kind of on the opposite end of you here. I think that this was just a bad game, and it happened in a terrible time for him, and he struggled. Like you could be like, oh, the picks aren't all his fault. Well, I don't care. He was terrible this whole game. Like it didn't matter. He got nothing going except for the one pass to McConkey, and so he's got to eat that, and that's fine. But I thought that Justin Herbert, of all the times, this was his best season. By the end of the season, I was like, finally, there it is. There's like the top 5-ish guy that everybody was talking about that I never saw before. I was like, yeah, he's got a lot of highlights, but he's never really put it together. He's never played well in clutch situations. It's always just been like, well, who cares? Justin Herbert's awesome. Like, I guess the results were never there. And then this season, when the results finally start to come, and he looked like a really good quarterback, especially down the stretch, and that guy that everybody thought he was his first 3 seasons. Now, all of a sudden, he has a terrible playoff game. And now, all of a sudden, this is creeping in of like, oh, well, Justin Herbert, he's stuck in the playoffs and his record in the playoffs. And it's like, of all the times for this to start happening, I don't think this is the time. I think Justin Herbert just picked a bad day to have a bad day.
It has to, though, because we don't allow, you're right. What you're trying to apply to this conversation is context, which I love. But we don't allow context for anything else. Like, all anybody ever talks about is Josh Allen's record against the Chiefs.
Dak Prescott.
And nobody ever sits there and says, well, Josh wasn't on the field for the last 12 seconds of that loss. Like,
right.
Like we don't allow context. Dak is another great example. It feels like anytime a quarterback puts up big numbers, but it doesn't have wins on it, we turn around and say, well, they're just padding their stats at the end. They're not really that good. That guy sucks. Like, we find a negative argument for 90% of the quarterbacks. And I don't know if it's because the Chargers just aren't under the same magnifying glass. Maybe that's it. Maybe because the Chargers have had borderline incompetent coaching for years. Like, there's always been another reason it's somebody else's fault. But we don't afford that level of grace and context for anybody else. So we got 2 choices here. We can either start to apply context to every quarterback conversation, which I would love. I just don't think that we can make that happen. So the more rational thinking here is, cool, if we're going to hold every quarterback accountable to wins and losses essentially is the only stat that matters, as dumb as that is, then we got to do the same thing to Justin Herbert. And the Chargers have historically underperformed every year of his career. And now 2 years into two playoff games into his career, he's not been good enough. They have not been able to win playoff games. And that's the only thing we would say about Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Jared Goff or any of the other quarterbacks we're quick to run praise to, or I should say we're quick to run criticism to. Yeah.
And I you know what? I do agree with that because I was saying that like last year. I was saying, why is this quarterback covered differently than every other quarterback in my lifetime? Like it was like the normal rules of like, oh, Dak stinks. He can't win a big one because they lost to the Packers in the wild card round. Like, whatever. He was second in the MVP voting. What are we even talking about? That never applied to Justin Herbert. Now, again, I think there's just context here. And I'm willing to be more patient with Justin Herbert and give him another year. Give him some weapons to work with. We forget, like, they traded Keenan Allen. They cut Mike Williams. They got rid of Austin Eckler because of salary cap issues mostly. And they're still rebuilding. And Ladd McConkey's a very good start to that in the skill positions. They're going to get better. If Justin Herbert, if you improve the team around him and he comes out next year, and again, there's no playoff success at the end of it. Okay, then we could revisit this conversation. I think for now, though, I'm going to be more patient with Justin Herbert. I'm not going to jump all over him for this terrible guy. Like, he was terrible, and I'm not trying to excuse that at all. But I'm just saying, I think he had by far the best season of his career. He's had better seasons statistically, no doubt. Like, he had 5,000 yard season one year. But I thought this was the season he really developed into a franchise great quarterback. And yes, the step back in the playoffs is disappointing. No question about that. But I'm willing to be patient and say, give him another year with Harbaugh, give him a better supporting cast. And I think that he will come through in the playoffs the next time he has a shot at it.
I'm not saying that the Chargers don't have their quarterback. I think they have one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I do believe that. I do think that if we played the would you rather game for a lot of these teams, that there are plenty of teams that a few years ago, the perception is a lot of teams would have dropped anything for Justin Herbert. I don't think right now that he's in this. We've seen nothing that puts him in the same tier as the tier we thought he was in. We thought he was in the same tier as Lamar and Mahomes and Josh Allen in the AFC and Joe Burrow in the AFC. He doesn't look to me like he's in that tier. Those four guys live in a different universe, and that's a universe that he used to belong in the eyes of many. He used to be able to walk into that superhero club and fit right in. And now, I think if he walks up to the door of the castle and knocks on it, the four superheroes inside are going to say, nah, man, like, you haven't done enough to get into this door. And that's just a different way of talking about Justin Herbert. Doesn't mean that he can't earn his way there, but I just don't put him in that same tier.
AFC quarterbacks as the Avengers. That's our next show. That's what we got to do.
Let's go. We'll tie them all together. We have a game tomorrow night. Minnesota taking on the Rams. We all know that that's being played in Arizona. Our thoughts go out to everybody in California impacted by the fires, obviously, far bigger than football. There is a football game that will take place tomorrow night. We will do a special episode afterwards. I just feel like this game being moved and all the chaos in life, it either galvanizes everybody together in that win one for the Gipper way, or it's a distraction that I think plays into it. And frankly, I don't want to take on two of the best coordinators in the NFL if I've been even slightly distracted. So I'm rolling with the Vikings in this game. How about you?
I think I've changed my mind too and gone with the Vikings. I just think that dealing with this from the Rams' perspective and having this isn't football anymore. This is life. And athletes, again, we talked about this on the Friday show. Great athletes, and everybody who's in the NFL is a great athlete. Let's put it that way. They have a way of compartmentalizing things that we just don't understand. And it could be that you're right. The Rams have a performance for the ages, and they win this for LA or whatever that even means, because it's not like the result of a football game is bringing your house back if you're a part of that. So, but I do think that I think there's going to be a Vikings home game almost. Like, think about it. Like, people in LA are spending money to go to Arizona for a football game right now, whereas if I'm in Minnesota and I think I can get in cheap, I'm like, it's like 4 degrees here in Minneapolis. Let's go to Arizona and see this playoff game. I think it's going to turn into a Vikings home game. They're a very good football team, obviously. And I just think it's too much. I just think it's too much for the Rams to overcome. I think it'd be a great story if the Rams won. Going into this game, if nothing was happening in LA, and I wish nothing was happening in LA bad, I thought the Rams were a great upset pick because they matched up well against the Vikings in the first time. They rested their guys in week 18, but everything changed this week. So I hope to get a good game, and I hope that it provides some moments of levity for the people in LA, win or lose. But I just think the Vikings probably win this one.
That does it for us. 200 episodes. Frank mentioned it earlier. Awesome. Incredibly proud and thankful that we get to do this. So to have 200 episodes is pretty amazing. We couldn't do it without Stone behind the scenes. He's the one that actually makes it look pretty and sound pretty. So Stone deserves all the credit, really. So be sure to give Stone all the love. You can follow us on social media. We will be back tomorrow with the recap of Vikings Rams. We'll do a quickie for you there. Inside coverage quickie, I think, has a different meaning than you would have thought. But we're going to go with that. So we'll get you all of our reactions to that. We'll figure out how the playoffs look moving forward. As always, if you listen this far, rate, review, subscribe. Really helps us out a lot. Leave a comment. especially if it's a complimentary one. We like those. And I hope your team won. No matter what, I hope your team won and you get all the glory, because there's just nothing better than playoff football. I think we're all reminded today that this weekend, that even when the games are just awful, it's still better than anything. So congratulations to everybody. Hope your team won. Thanks for hanging out with us. Come check us out tomorrow.